Hey painting pals, welcome back to Mandy's Minis. Today we are talking brushes, and believe me, I know my fair share. I have more than this, but the most important thing, if you love your brushes, they'll love you. There are two types of brushes, synthetic and natural hair brushes. Natural hair, more expensive. The main one used is typically sable hair, so that's what I have a lot of. Now these are mostly synthetic brushes. I always recommend start with synthetic brushes. If you learn to care for those well, then you know you can spend money on a better brush. So, what type of brushes are better? Depends on what you're doing and what you're using it for. I have my Workhorse brushes right here. These do the majority of my actual base coating and generally getting paint onto the model. They do not have points anymore, at least not good ones, but they get the job done. You do not want to take a good brush and jam that into some of those small areas. That's where these come in. And these were once my go-to detail brushes, but over time they lost their points, they lost those tips, and therefore they moved down to where they're now the workhorses. Then I have my detail brushes. Now these are my nice brushes that have good tips that I use for just the details, to get those fine points, to get the eyes, to get all those little tiny things that you need that fine point to get. That's what these are for. I use Winsor Newtons, and as you can see, I have a variety of different sizes for larger figures and larger areas, all the way down to teeny tiny ones. Most people will tell you that you want to stick with a number 2. That's what this one is. And that is what I use the most often. However, when I was starting out and when I was just getting to learn how to use these brushes properly, I did use a lot of the smaller ones for the details because I didn't have enough experience, knowledge, care for my number 2s to be able to keep them working. As you get better, you can move up a little bit more. The reason you want the bigger brush is because it holds more paint, so you have to load it less, and it also holds more water, so you have to load it less. So it's a much better option when you can actually keep it the point that it's supposed to be. And if you accidentally use it as your main brush, then you're less likely, the more abuse you give it, the quicker it's going to lose that point. So that's why these things are very important. But I still have some smaller ones for in case I ever feel like I need them. And if I am struggling, sometimes I may go down to them every now and again. So it's okay. Now again, I use Winsor Newtons. Those are my favorites. I love them. They are not the best brushes for everyone. They're the best for me. Other people, they don't like the feel of them. It's very personal. And if anyone tells you you have to have a specific brand, they're trying to sell you on that brand and nothing more. They don't necessarily care about your style, your painting, and beware of that kind of outlook. You want to make sure that you get the brush that feels right for you. There are other great brands that are equivalent to Winsor Newton. Da Vinci, which I have a few. Raphael, I think I have 1 or 2 of those because I've tried them. They just don't have the same feel, the same give to them that the Winsor Newton has that I particularly like for my style. So you do have to test out to find what works for you. Until you get more experience with brushes, again, stick with your synthetic ones. They're still good. This is a liner brush, which is supposed to be good for lining. I find that my detail brush works just as well for it. So I don't really use those, but here's a nice one. RG104 Atlas brush, made in China. So this was one of mine once upon a time, and it's synthetic, and they fray much faster and easier. So why do I keep them if I'm not using them? Well, I use them for other things. Sometimes when I am making a base, I will put a bunch of glue down and I'll need to spread it out. Well, these are good for that because who cares? I use it with the glue and then toss it and then it's gone. Or I use it with pigment powders, stippling when I want a random pattern. These are good for that because they're all frayed, so you're gonna get something a little more random. Here's another one, golden synthetic round. Now we do want to use round brushes for most of our painting. And then you might notice I have these other brushes in here. These are cheap makeup brushes that I sometimes use for quick dry brushing. I do also have the Ninjon Artist Opus set that Ben got me as a present one year. And these are really, really good dry brushes. So I do use those quite a bit, but sometimes I don't want to go through the trouble of pulling them out. I'm just doing something really, really fast. So I have some cheap ones. Strangely enough, I have the same thing for my regular brushes. And these are ones that I get on Amazon. If you're interested in any of them, the exact ones I'm using, then you can go in the description below and check out our recommended items. It does use Amazon affiliate links, so that will help out the channel at no extra cost to you. We get a little kickback from Amazon. But these are great because metallics, since they have that pigment in there, they can actually damage your nicer brushes. So I don't let my detail brushes ever touch metallic paint. I have separate brushes for those. These are #1, so they're a little smaller than I really want them to be. But I mean, I get a bag of 100 for like $15. So I can use these, toss them, and it's no big deal. Those are my metallics. What else do we have? Toothbrush. This is for splattering blood or bile or any of that fun stuff. So there's my toothbrush. Flat brushes, I also use these. They can be good for the splatter, but they're also okay to use for dry brushing. So that's something else I do with that. As you can see, there's a lot of different brands and there's a lot of different things to try. These are synthetic brushes I got off Amazon that I like because of how big they are. Actually, these are natural hair brushes. So these are not Winsor Newtons though, because they're a lot cheaper and I don't do the large sizes quite so much. But sometimes I get commissions that are like these giant pieces, and painting that with a #2 brush is just ridiculous. It's gonna take you all year. So I do have some bigger ones as well. When you get a brand new brush, this is a brand new Winsor Newton that I have never used. I keep some around for backup because I will frequently mess up and damage my other one, and since I have commissions, I can't be down waiting for a new one to come in, and no one carries these locally for me. So I always have a spare set. But you can see that nice point. We're making sure that there's no frayed areas. If that's the case, when they come in that way, you want to take care of that, trim the stray strands so that when you're using it, it is nice and always together and formed. So that is also what you want to look for in a synthetic brush. A lot of times you just grab a package and they might already be frayed, and then you're fighting an uphill battle. So you really want to look for a package that has nice sharp tips when you get them. And the goal is to maintain that sharp tip for as long as possible. So, important part, how do you keep that tip? Well, it's all in how you treat the brush. So, I'm going to dip my brush in the water. I would also like to point out here, going along with the metallics, I have the Crayjoofy. I love this. Also have a discount code for if you want to purchase this kit, and we'll link to the video where I did the product review for this. This is a great product. 1 cup is for my regular paints, 1 cup for the metallics. So once again, those metallic pigments cannot get into my detail brushes and ruin them. Have complete isolation, except for when I mess up. Okay, so we're gonna put it in there. I'm gonna dab so that we're not dripping water everywhere. And then I'm going to twist the brush between my fingers to form that perfect point. So now that we've got that perfect point, I can put it in the paint, load it up, plenty of paint, and I'm going to wipe it off again on my wet bed. It's a napkin, but it has some water on it, so it's a little moist. You don't want to use a dry napkin for this. I know it looks dry, but there's a couple drops where I put some water on there. And you don't want to use that dry part because it'll absorb too much of the paint. The other thing is, if you don't want to do a wet bed like this, the back of your hand will give you the perfect consistency. A lot of painters do that. I get enough paint on my hands, I don't need to do that. So, as you guys have seen from my painting videos, I'm a messy painter. Sorry, it's just what I am. And I still get good results, so it's okay. That's what matters, right? So now I have the perfect amount. I can start painting on my mini with all my little details, whatever I'm going to paint. And now he's got a speckled belly, because why not? I can get very fine details and very fine lines just by going very lightly. I need a little more water. And just by going very lightly, I can get very, very, very fine lines on that. Another thing, as you're using your brush, if you do, like that first one when I said I needed more water, if your paint is struggling to come off your brush, that means you need more water. You need a good amount of water in your brush to help the paint flow. As you saw, all I did was literally dip the tip in the water and then reform the final tip. I didn't even add more paint. So you go through less paint that way as well. So it's very important. And again, then we get all our nice details where we can do all sorts of thin lines as well. Then we're going to clean it off, dip, and reform. Always be reforming that because you want the brush and the bristles to remember to go into that same shape. And that little twist, that's fine. That's what you want. That's what all the master painters that you see online, that's what they're doing with their brushes, to keep that point. So that's how you load up your brush. That's the between paint cleaning. When you're done, you need to do a deep clean. So when I've finished for the night and I'm about to go to bed, I'll admit, just like most painters, I'm terrible about it. I don't always do it. But you should, because again, if you love your brush, you care for it, and it will love you back and keep that point to keep giving you the best painting results. So, we've cleaned it off, reformed it, but now we're done for the night. We're gonna grab our soap. That's right, brush soap. This is the most popular one I've seen. It's the cheapest on Amazon. It's the Masters brush cleaner. It's okay. I don't use this for my detail brushes. I use it for everything else. I've used it so much. You can see it's rattling around. I'm starting to run it down. But the one that I found works the best is the Artist Opus. Now again, nobody's sponsored this. I'm not a sponsored channel. So even though I'm talking about how much I love Winsor Newton and Artist Opus, they don't give me anything for saying that. These are just my personal opinions. But I really love this Artist Opus soap because I feel like it really gets clean more than any of the other ones I've tried. And I've tried a bunch. I've got some down here that are chemical based that are like, oh, don't get it on your skin and things like that. So I've gone through and tried a whole bunch. This is what I found is the best, with the cheap one being really next in line. So don't spend a whole lot of money on any of these. And we're gonna put some more water on it, on the brush. And then we're gonna swirl it around in the soap the same way we always twist it. You wanna keep going the same way. So again, fact, you're keeping that same motion, that same twist into your brush. And we're just getting all the paint off. You can then swirl it around in your hand. I've found that this is always a good way. Then we can rinse, reshape, and set it aside. Now we're done for the night. Now sometimes, like I said, I make mistakes. I do things that are bad. This is a product that I found online. It's the Brush Shaper, and it actually works sometimes. This is not going to take any of these old, frayed, cheap brushes and turn them back into a nice new point. It's not Miracle Worker. It's not going to do that. But if you have one like this, that's not quite holding its point anymore, but it's close. Let's say that with this one, I forgot to twist it or whatever. So now it's a little off. Well, first off, the water is going to help that to begin with. And you can see I've already got a pretty good point right back there. But I can still use this to help shape it. And you're supposed to dip it right in and then reshape the brush after the way you want it to stay. I've found that doesn't really work great because when you dip it in, it all kind of frays out, and then as you're twisting it in your finger, you're taking all the brush shaper off, so it doesn't work as well. So I shake this up, and then I've got some that hit the lid, and I will just do that same rolling motion that we do on the paper towel to get some on it, and then reshape the point the same way. Whatever way works, but this way it keeps plenty on there. And now I let it dry, and that brush will dry in just a couple hours, and it tends to hold that shape a little bit better. You're going to extend the life a little bit with it. Not a lot. It can't do miracles. Now you'll notice I have this fancy stand, and this is a Masterson. I got it on Amazon. Again, it is in my suggested tools items, so you can find it there. But it holds the brushes in the correct position. You always want to store your brushes with the bristles down. And the reason being, when you store them up like this, the water runs into the ferrule of the brush, and that expands the bristles so they fray faster. So if you don't have something to hold them down like this, or also my Crydrufi, you can see, has that same feature, which I absolutely love. If you don't have anything like that, your best bet, let it dry sideways, and then you can put it away up when there's no more water to run down into the ferrule. So, important brush tip there. That's pretty much all I have for brushes. I mean, not quantity wise, there's still more that I haven't even addressed, but that's all I have to talk about on the subject of brushes. So if you have anything that I missed, make sure you put it down in the comments. Check out the suggested equipment while you're down there. And a big thank you to our patrons. While you're down there, if you'd like to support us, you can give us a subscribe, a like. Every little bit does help, and we really appreciate it. We also have our patrons. Again, I really appreciate them. I love the community. We talk a lot of D&D, a lot of miniature painting. You can get extra tips and tricks, early access to videos, private live streams, and so much. So it's a real small, tight-knit community right now, but we'd love to have you join us if you'd like. And until next time, thank you for watching. Have fun and keep creating.